Welcome to Remix EQ Live, where we are amplifying equity with a mix of information, interviews, and inspiration. I'm your host, Dr. Erica Tate, and today I'm broadcasting live from Savannah, Georgia, where I live. For those who are joining us today, please drop a greeting of choice in the comments and let us know where you are joining from and the equity work that you do or aspire to do. And remember, Remix EQ Live is an experience that's meant to be shared. So I encourage you to hit the share and invite buttons and bring along your people, your network, your family, your friends, your peeps to join our Remix EQ community today. And while those comments are flowing in and those invitations are flowing out, I want to remind you that Remix EQ Live offers the opportunity for us to connect and build community with each other around the equity work being performed throughout the world. And we do this by centering the work. That is, our guests and viewers share example of what they do in their role or position as a way to illustrate the innovative and effective ways they advance equity and the spaces in which they live, work, and play. So, throughout the show and in the comments, I invite you to also share what you do to make the world a more just place. Today, we inch toward the close of season 3 with another Remix EQ Live interview show. Today, I'm interviewing Deepa Iyer, who is the Senior Director of Strategic Initiatives at the Building Movement Project, host of the Solidarity Is This podcast, and the award winning author of Re to Sing America, South Asian, Arab, Muslim, and Sikh immigrants shape our multiracial future, and Social Change Now, a guide for reflection and connection. Today's conversation centers on solidarity and change as we discuss the roles we can play as individuals and organizations to make the world a more just place. So, Remix EQ community, let us begin this conversation for change. Welcome, Deepa.
Thank you so much, Erica. It's great to be here.
It was great to have you. I invite you to introduce yourself to our community. And as you do, please share any career twists and turns that have led you to your current role.
Sure. Well, hello, everyone. It's great to be here with you. My name is Deepa Iyer, and I would say, I guess, starting out in terms of introducing myself, I'm an immigrant. I moved to the United States to Kentucky at the age of 12 from India. So you could lightly imagine that caused a lot of challenges for myself and my family. And while I didn't have the words that I do now to describe them, I would say a lot of those challenges really centered around feeling othered, feeling displaced, not feeling like I belonged. And those questions really stayed with me as I moved through college and law school, and ended up working in immigrant communities in Asian American, South Asian, Muslim, Arab, and Sikh communities for about 15 years, particularly after the horrific 9/11 attacks. And so a lot of my time, and we'll talk about this, has been spent in the role of a frontline responder, in the role of a builder to create and help to start institutions and networks. And right now, the role I play at the Building Movement Project, where I have the privilege of working on solidarity and social movements, is really around being a weaver, connecting different communities together, and a storyteller, uplifting stories of solidarity. So that's a little bit about my trajectory and some of the choices that I've made, again, to figure out how I can best support ecosystems that are focused on equity and justice.
Yeah. Thank you so much for introducing yourself and sharing your story. We love to learn how those who are on our show come to do this work. And I appreciate like the turns from lawyer to activist and also like how you now tell those stories and amplify those voices. And so I know we are going to learn about all the different roles that you have played and that others can play. So thank you so much for that introduction. We have a couple of comments. Hello, Emily Payne. She says, good morning from Oklahoma City. Oklahoma. Hello, hello. And hello, Brianna Matchett. Good morning from the Tallahassee, Florida sunshine. And then Joy says, good morning from Phoenix. Hi, Joy. I'm glad you could join. Oh, she's also into amplifying stories. So this is really
Perfect.
exciting. Well, thank you all. And definitely as the show continues on, connect with Deepa in the comments throughout the show. And for those who are just joining us, this is Remix EQ Live, where we are amplifying equity through a remix of information, interviews, and inspiration. And now that you've had the chance to meet or reconnect with Deepa Iyer, I know that you're inviting others to tune in. And of course, I invite you to interact with us. So post your comments to say hello, ask questions, share examples, and any learnings you have as you dive into this interview with us. You are part of our Remix EQ community. So now we center the work. This is an opportunity for us to learn from Deepa about her perspectives and approaches that have led to social change for many groups in the US and globally. So, Deepa, in your role as Senior Director of Strategic Initiatives at the Building Movement Project, how do you build solidarity in your work for social change?
Yeah, and welcome everyone who's joining. So the Building Movement Project is a national nonprofit, and we've been around for about 20 years. And our goal is to really catalyze social change by supporting other nonprofits and social movements. And we do that in three ways. We create a lot of resources that can be utilized by folks who are interested in advancing social change. We also are really focused on curating and building relationships with organizations and movement leaders around the country. And we also do research. So if you are on our website, the link is right here on the banner. You will find a lot of reports that we have written about the nonprofit sector, what movement leaders need, and how the issues that we're all dealing with, whether it is the pandemic, whether it is targeted violence, all of the overlapping crises that many of us are moving through, how organizations that are working on those crises can be supported. So that's a little bit about the work. And I particularly focus with a wonderful team on issues of solidarity. And you can learn more about that on our website. And in that role, we do everything from produce reports to weaving together organizations and movements for strategic conversation. And we do a whole host of trainings and workshops around both the social change ecosystem framework, which I know we'll be talking about, as well as transformative solidarity.
Yes, thank you so much. And could you share with us, Deepa, a bit about on the show, we like to add language and create shared meaning around many of the terms that are used in this work. And could you share a little bit from your perspective, like what solidarity is and how it contributes to social change?
Yeah, I really appreciate that question because I think you're so right. A lot of times we use language and we just think everybody is on the same page in terms of what it means, right? So for us, when we talk about solidarity, I really like to talk about solidarity as a verb. It's an action, right? It's something that you do. And so that's really important to keep in mind. It's not necessarily something that we get to, it's something that we have to practice on a daily basis with real intention. I also think that solidarity can often be the through line between equity and justice. And what I mean by that is that even if we have principles of equity, values of equity that we're really committed to, when we act in solidarity, when we do that practice, then we are able to also connect our values of equity to justice, to creating, as you said earlier, a more just world, more just workplace, more just neighborhood. So I think that solidarity can do that. And then some examples of what the practice of solidarity means. So one is that we want to try to find connections and commonalities between each other. I think in this country right now, oftentimes we can really feel like we are polarized, that we don't have anything in common with our neighbors or people who don't look like us. And so one of the ways in which we can practice solidarity is to find the threads that connect. Maybe it is a shared goal that we have with others about how we want our schools to be. Maybe it is a real belief in understanding and learning about each other's histories and our points of entry. How do we get here? What moves us, right? So trying to find those commonalities and connections is just one way of practicing solidarity.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate the definition and really like helping us think about it in terms of like an act and a practice that we have to do as we do this work. And of course, I love all the examples because that really helps build our knowledge. So thank you so much for sharing. There's some people joining in. Dr. Liz DeBetta, good morning from rainy Michigan. May our sunshine go to you. Welcome to the show. And then Dr. Chantel Perry, good morning from Atlanta. Yay, hello. I'm excited to listen in. Look, we have us all across the country today. I love it. I love it. Oh, for those who are tuning in to Remix EQ Live regularly, you know that I love to celebrate with you our guest authorship and their works. And today I say works because Deepa offers us such a range of publications that really can support our learning and our practices as we work toward equitable outcomes in the communities we serve. So first, Deepa is the host of the podcast Solidarity Is This, where you can go to learn more and gather more examples of what solidarity looks like in action. And it looks like the new season has just dropped. So that's very exciting. I saw the theme around bringing together storytelling and storytellers. And I was like, I'm excited. Subscribing. And then Deepa also won the 2016 American Book Award for her first book, Seeing America. South Asian, Arab, Muslim, and Sikh immigrants shape our multiracial future. And this book chronicles community-based histories in the wake of 9/11. So please check it out. And in today's conversation, we're focusing on Deepa's latest book, Social Change Now, a guide for reflection and connection. And this book, did she have it? Yeah, yay! I love it. So this book not only provides a framework to prompt your thinking and your actions, but it's also filled with examples and space to really reflect on your social change journey, past, present, and future. So Deepa, in your book, Social Change Now, you introduce readers to the social change ecosystem framework that you developed. Will you explain your framework for us and how we can apply it in our work towards social change?
Yes, absolutely. And thank you so much for celebrating. I think it's important to, especially as women of color, to support one another and amplify that. So I really appreciate that, Erica. Sure. So the social change ecosystem framework is my humble offering to people who are interested in deepening their commitments to social change through action, right? So, and this is a framework that I developed back in 2017 when I was going through a time of really feeling overwhelmed by all of the crises that were happening to communities that I care about in this country, and not knowing how to have a sustainable and effective response, how to play the right role. And so I realized that over time, whenever you look at social movements, there are certain characteristics in the sense that individuals or organizations step up to play certain roles. And they do that in right relationship with shared values and as a way to support one another. So this framework then has, and what you're seeing on the screen is a kind of a poster that actually has the visual of the social change map. And the map has 3 components to it. The middle circle in yellow is really focused on identifying our shared values, and not just in words, but what they mean in practice. The second component of the framework is that there's an invitation to think about playing a number of roles that often show up in social change efforts. So these could include frontline responders who respond to emergencies and crises, to visionaries, the ones who see sort of the North Star of where we're going and inspire us, and healers who are really looking at how trauma is embedded in terms of communities and bodies and systems, and how to address that trauma. And so often people will see themselves in one or two of these roles. And Erica, I'd be curious to see what you might say. And then the last pillar of this framework is that everything is connected, as you can see, visually on the map. And that implies and goes back to what we were talking about in terms of solidarity, that we are able to advance our values and goals when we work together rather than work in isolation or in silos. So those are the three pillars of the framework, and I'm happy to get into more detail about them or answer questions.
Yeah, so please definitely add your questions into the comments for Deepa. I have prepared a few. No, I love it. I was thinking when I was reading your bio, I was like, she walks her talk, right? And that like you introduce yourself, and you did even in this introduction through many of the roles. So I was just wondering, one, if you could share what are the key roles that you usually embody, but also do you have any examples of when you needed to shift roles?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, one of the ways in which people utilize this framework is to get a sense of their sustainability. And what I mean by that is that, doing social change work is a marathon, right? It has a lot of ups and downs. Our commitment is not to one issue or one moment, but it has to be long term. And it has to be a practice of iteration and change. So, a way that you could use the framework is to map yourself out and say, what are the roles that I often play or am called upon to play when I engage in social change? And if you find that you're playing, say, like 7 roles at a given time, it can really be a yellow signal to think about, okay, am I showing up in my best self? Because if I'm actually holding 7 roles, for example, I'm likely not as effective as I want to be. And I may also be taking up a lot of space in my ecosystem that perhaps could belong to others, right? And so for myself, I definitely, as I mentioned, played the role of a frontline responder for a lot of the time that I've been doing social change, responding to the backlash that community members faced after 9/11, which is what's, as you mentioned, chronicled in We Too Sing America, and during the last administration. And I realized that it was taking a toll on me in different ways. I was feeling numb. I was feeling overwhelmed. I was not at my best. And I wasn't good for others either that I was working with. And so I did make a deliberate shift to play a different role, to play the role of a guide and to support other frontline responders instead. And that's what guides do. They've played a role on the map for some time. They have developed a sense of discernment and wisdom, and they can impart that through mentorship and counseling and support to others who are interested in playing the role. And so instead of leaving my ecosystem altogether because I was exhausted or fatigued, right, I was able to still stay because I care about these issues, I care about the community, but find myself to be of better service by choosing a different role.
Oh, thank you for that. Yeah, I read the book and worked through the guide, and so I found that I was like, we actually were talking. I was like, oh, she speaks my language. But yeah, like a weaver. For me, it was like a weaver and an experimenter. I think
Yeah.
were like my top two. Like I like to try out new things and then adjust along the way. And then of course I love finding the connections between people and the work that they're doing, hence like the show and connecting you to the community. So yeah, no, I think that, and I love the like I love both your discussion of how you were a frontline responder and how you became weary because it is really hard work. And that, like, because you care so much about your communities, and of course you're committed to staying in this fight, these battles, that you deliberately shifted
Mhm.
your role, right? So you could take care of yourself, but still make that contribution. And I appreciate you raising that up because that's important for people to hear and know that it's still possible to do this work, but you might have to do it a little bit differently to preserve your soul, which is really important in, in this work. So thank you so much. And I know that so that the social change roadmap is not just for individuals. You can also, like organizations can also apply it. So could you share an example about how an organization might apply this framework?
Yeah, yeah. And thank you for sharing the roles that you play, Erica. I can totally see how you're both an experimenter and a weaver, and I would say also maybe a storyteller, yeah, it's a great example of how your role can often shift. It can often lead to new ideas, especially the role of an experimenter, which we need more of. So yes, you are correct. This framework is multidimensional, so it can be used by individuals, it can be used by organizations. So an example of that could be if you are working, say, with the DEI task force, and you want to figure out how various people who are part of the task force are working together. You could map them out and see. You could also look at your DEI task force as part of a bigger equity ecosystem, right? And so I've worked with, say, academic institutions where there's a DEI task force, and that they will think about, well, how does our task force fit with all of the other components within the university setting that are also connected to DEI, like a multicultural center, for example, right? And so what we often find when we do that sort of org mapping is areas where there is redundancy, where everybody falls like in the same category or role, or we find a lot of gaps, right? And there's an opportunity then to think about either shifting or how to bring others in. And so a lot of the roles that often I find don't get filled when we're doing an org mapping is the role of the caregiver, which is oftentimes seen as not important, but it is absolutely vital to doing social change work, right? You talked earlier about taking care of your soul. And I also find that often the role of the experimenter is rare to find, because we have a tendency, I think, to stick with the status quo, and getting out of that and trying new things is something that is so important, I think, around equity work, especially. But that is a way that you could use it as an organization to map out your staff or to look at your organization as part of a bigger ecosystem.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. We have a few comments. All right. Good morning, Orlando. He's from rainy Virginia. We're still sending you sunshine.
I'm from rainy DC, so I get it.
I know. I feel like I drove through that rain yesterday, so I am glad the sun is back. And then Dr. DeBetta says, I find that roles shift depending on context, but also can be interconnected in certain circumstances. I love this framework so much.
Oh,
Thank you. Yeah, so thank
thank
you for
you.
sharing. No, I think it's great. And I love that it can be applied on an individual and organizational level. And then thinking about not only who's in, I would say, like in the room or in the space, but also who to bring in. Like I think those are really great
Yes.
points. It like helps us think about like a, for lack of it, but like a well-rounded or fully kind of realized like group of or network, right? For doing this work. So that's really great. I'm so excited. um so and you've done this that like one of the purposes of this show is really to add examples and strategies and tools to our repertoire here in the Remix EQ community so we can work to make change. And it really helps us to connect to and visualize the important work that you're doing, but also we can learn with and from you about the experiences of the people and places that you serve. And so I really appreciate you sharing the social change ecosystem framework because I think it is such a great tool and can be used in many of the ways that we discussed. But before we move on, I did want to add a learning that I had in reading the Social Change Now book kind of to our conversation and to our space. And so here, when you have the visual up, we could see the social change roles. But I thought in the book, you also provide detail around what it means to have shared values and then an ecosystem. And I wanted to read the definition or really vision of the ecosystem and kind of share where it resonated with me because I had never seen a definition like I've seen definitions of ecosystems, but this definition. And so I'll read it and add it to our space and then share. But it's so Deepa defines or kind of clarifies this vision that an ecosystem is a community, a home, or a place and space where we feel a sense of belonging, familiarity, and alignment around our values, goals, and strategies for the future. and where we emphasize the importance of cultivating, nurturing, and sustaining relationships, connections, and solidarity. And you can hear that as she speaks today. And for me, I thought this was like the warmest definition of ecosystems. So I often work with people who talk about ecosystems as it relates to like learning or STEM learning. And so we talk about like locations of learning and resources that we need and access to those resources, which are, important and critical. But I thought that they felt like colder constructs for defining community, which is what we're talking about. And then I thought your definition, which offers up language like home and sense of belonging and familiarity and nurturing and connection. And I was like, yes. I think, I don't know. I just thought that, I do know. I think that it really can shift our thinking and how we study these community spaces and how we participate in them. And I can just definitely tell by the work that you do, and even in this definition, that is very much informed by compassion and care for the communities that you're serving. And I just think that it's such a great counter to like the trauma that we're experiencing, and really great way to create these conditions for change that we're seeking for. And I love this definition.
Oh, great.
I've adopted
Yeah.
it.
Go ahead, please do. Yeah, I think it's a starting point, and all what you shared is so important too, like access to resources and right, all of that is absolutely vital. But yeah, sometimes I think we some of the language can be really sterile and disconnecting, and I think I do feel like one of the reasons people have resonated with this framework is because there is a sense of they see themselves, or it offers up a different way of looking at really vital work that is happening in a time of urgency, but with a real emphasis on the relational and a real emphasis on not losing sight of the values that drive us here in the first place.
Yeah, no, I definitely see that. It's really great. And I know that we are going to have a chance to experience more works from you, that you have an upcoming book that introduces the social change ecosystem framework to our youngest change makers. So please tell us more, and especially what motivated you to write a children's book on social change.
Yeah, so I am really excited that there will be a children's picture book coming out next fall that is based on the social change framework. And the motivation was was probably twofold. One was that I received a lot of like pictures and comments from educators, teachers, and parents who were using the framework to explain social change to the young people in their lives, particularly during the pandemic and the uprisings in 2020. And then I myself am a parent, and my child is a bit older; he's 12. But he too, I noticed, was learning about historical events. And when I used the framework to explain some historical events to him, I saw that it connected in a little bit of a different way. And so those were some of the motivations for writing this children's picture book that is being illustrated by Romina Galata, and it'll be coming out next fall. So please follow me so you can keep an eye out for it. And hopefully we can get it into a lot of school libraries around the country.
Oh yes, definitely, definitely. I'm so excited for there to be, like for your book to really be a point of conversation, or a conversation starter for both parents and those within schools, because both to interpret the history that has happened, and maybe include some more history that needs to be brought into school, but also for, I think the earlier children can learn how they can contribute to their community, the better. And then this map really offers up so many avenues, right, to make change, that I think children can definitely connect to. So I can't wait. I'm buying it for my kids. You already know. You already know, and sharing with the educators.
Definitely the right age for it, for sure.
Yeah, I know, and I'm always looking for a great book. So yes, I think it's wonderful. Thanks. Well, our Remix EQ community, and on the show, each episode, our guests drop knowledge and inspiration to make the world a more just place. And Deepa, you've done just that by sharing your story, helping us understand solidarity just a little bit better, and also thinking about the many roles roles that we can play in achieving social justice. And so I would love for you to just drop one last piece of inspiration on us. And so as you share, you embody these many roles in your pursuit of social change: weaver, frontline responder, storyteller, like this guy. Which you have been on this show for us, so I appreciate it. But what has kept you inspired and motivated to make this world a more just place?
Yeah, and it's such a good question because things can be quite hopeless at times and feel like we are always kind of pushing the boulder up a very, very high hill. And I feel that. I feel that a lot too. I think what keeps me motivated, though, is a couple of things. One is the sense that this is not a time to give up. Right, that we just can't give up and we can't stop. And I really do think about how Dr. King talked about the urgency of now. And I think about people like Mr. Belafonte, who just passed this week, who talked about the importance of being an activist and caring for one's community. And so I often feel like what motivates me are our ancestors and the people who've come before us, who entrusted us to keep going on this journey. So that is often a source of inspiration and support for me.
Yeah, thank you so much. Well, I am glad that you can draw on your ancestors and you can stay motivated because the work you do is so important and so critical. And so I appreciate you, and I appreciate you taking time out of your day and just generously sharing your knowledge and your stories and your inspiration. So thank you so much. I think we have a comment. Oh, Emily Payne. She's like, from Oklahoma, right? I think I remember that. She says the framework is interesting and I love it. Great. Yes. That's great. It's another, I think another framework that we can bring into our work and really think about who we are in this journey and how we can help others. So I am so glad. So thank you so much, Deepa. Just a reminder that I will return for another Remix EQ Live episode on Friday, May 12th at 11:30 a.m. Eastern. It will be our season 3 finale.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So be sure to watch your feed, check your inbox so that you have the details to tune into the next show, and of course share these details with your community. And until then, visit the Remix EQ Live webpage for episode recordings and more information about our inspiring guests like Deepa and upcoming events. And also discover new ways to support the Remix EQ community via donation and purchasing some of our like our merch, like our Amplify notebook. And while you're there, please poke around the website and learn more about my business, Blue Knowledge, and our growing families of brands and services, which advances equity in schools and communities. And you can also follow me on LinkedIn. And of course, I invite you to connect with me too. Let's see. Emily says the session has been amazing. Thank you. And then Joy says she can't wait to see your children's book. And you actually really should connect with Joy. She curates children's books by BIPOC authors. So there you go.
You did that weaving so well, right there.
I can't resist it. I know this is a match. And we're trying to get her on the show in the fall. Too. Yes.
Okay.
So having spoke with her and spoke with you, I feel like this is great. Yay, I'm excited. But thank you, Remix EQ community, for your engagement and your comments and your encouragement, and of course your rally, which is how we recognize, appreciate, learn, love, and take care of you as you make the world a more just place. I'm your host, Dr. Erica Tate, and this is Remix EQ Live. See you next time.